Hey everybody, this is a Vod review of TL versus C9. I'm John Valentine, and let's get into it. So, starting off looking at these team compositions, Cloud9 has what basically amounts to three winning lanes. The Poppy is going to be much stronger than the Jace in the early matchup. The Syndra should really be stronger in the 1 versus 1 into the Orianna at pretty much any point in the game. And Xayah is much stronger for the first few levels of the game than the Kai'Sa, and combine that with the weakness that you see out of an early game Galio, there really should be three winning pushing lanes for Cloud9. And Cloud9's strategy moving into this early game should really be to have pressure in all three of your lanes and use the early game skirmish potential of the jungle Aatrox to push aggressively into the enemy jungle, force them to basically not be able to track the location of the Aatrox very well by denying them vision into your half of the map. Get vision into the enemy jungle, track Xmithie, and use that to coordinate dives on whichever side of the map Xmithie isn't on. And or kill Xmithie in his jungle. The more powerful Aatrox skirmish, they have much better 2v2, much better Aatrox versus Sejuani 1 versus 1, so Cloud9 really wants to be winning, pushing all three of their lanes, and sending the Aatrox aggressively into Team Liquid's jungle to shut down Xmithie and really control the map from the beginning. Team Liquid, on the other hand, their main goal is to survive the laning phase and hopefully get Jace to a point where he is stronger in the 1 versus 1 than the Poppy. We'll see first there's a play about to happen. So, going into this, Jensen and Niski are both very, very close to hitting level 2, which would favor Cloud9 much more than it favors Team Liquid, just because Syndra's level 2 is, oh, she has a stun now, and Jensen's level 2 is this kind of slow/speed up or a shield, which is nowhere near as powerful in this 2v1 gank situation as having access to the Syndra stun. So the only real reason for Svenskeren to go in for this gank right now is because he believes Jensen is close enough that they can get this with level 1 Niski, and that Jensen in the next 1 or 2 creeps dying will walk back towards his turret and walk back away from Niski and not allow and put the lane into a position where this gank can't happen. So, Svenskeren does choose to come in earlier, and we'll see right here, Jensen gets to level 2, which gives him enough health to get through this before Niski gets to level 2. There's 3 additional low health caster minions that are still up, which would have provided Niski with that level 2. And that advantage on its own, Svenskeren really should have waited here. Misses the flash knockout. So right here, C9 could just back away, right? Going in for this flash play, Jensen does have heal. Niski is still level 1, so going in for this flash knockup turret dive is really kind of, it's an incredibly high variance play. And yes, Cloud9's team composition is stronger early and wants to be making these aggressive plays in the early game, but this is a really good way to risk losing that early pressure that you are to some extent dependent on. Yes, neither of these team compositions are as linear as what we've seen in other games, so C9's comp can go toe-to-toe to some extent with Liquid as the game moves on, but C9 really has this great, incredible early pressure in all of their lanes, and taking risks that would lead you to lose that is not really an intelligent choice. So if, for example, Cloud9 says, okay, let's not risk it, let's back off here, this is a huge win for them. Getting the kill onto Jensen, yes, that would be nice. However, if Cloud9 just backs off here, the wave right now is pushing towards Niski, which means that Niski can slow push this, get level 2, have that pressure onto Jensen since Jensen is so low health, and basically Niski is able to will be able to freeze the wave up here and zone Jensen off until he recalls, at which point he can push in because Jensen doesn't have the teleport, and Niski can shove in the wave and will get a massive advantage over Jensen. Add that to Jensen now not having flash, you have flash advantage on your jungle and mid, and you can come back for a repeat gank very easily. So this starts out really, really well, and Cloud9 just gets a little too antsy and ends up giving up this really, really great lead that they have kind of bought themselves in the mid lane by getting a little bit greedy and trying to pick up the kill. Yeah, Svenskeren missed the flash knockup, and if he had landed that, blah, blah, blah. It's not really relevant, right? Like, he probably would have died there even if he had managed to kill Jensen. At which point, Xmithie can come into the lane, can fix the freeze to stop Niski from freezing. Niski is also chunked. And it's altogether just a much worse situation for Cloud9. On its own, Svenskeren dying there causes Cloud9 to lose the bot side scuttle. Yes, Team Liquid has pressure in the bot side. They probably shouldn't, based on the strength of the Xayah, but it's a relic shield support versus a non-relic shield support, so it's understandable that the first wave or two, it's easier for Liquid to shove out. But Cloud9 will end up losing both Scuttle Crabs as a result of the overeagerness of this play. They will lose the opportunity to really shut down Jensen and a little bit of power in the bot lane. Right now, the map as it is right now is a bit of a nightmare state for Cloud9 because they're really going into this early game. We're looking to be pushing and winning all of their lanes, and currently they're only actually doing that in mid lane. Looking towards this bot lane, this is absolutely a matchup that Sneaky should be ahead on, and the fact that he is falling behind is really concerning for Cloud9. He will eventually be able to push out a little bit more aggressively as they regain control of the bottom side of the map, which they lost pretty much entirely based on that mid lane play. But it's a rough situation for Cloud9. That gank really started things off in the wrong direction for them. Right here, we see what really looks like Svenskeren walking through the Scuttle Crab. We know he didn't dash over the wall because he dashed over the back wall of the Baron Pit. So it really looks to me like he walked right over the Scuttle Crab, and TL really should know that he is there and he is moving topside. And Jace backs off a little bit. You can see we'll see it in the replay as well. But Jace walks down to ward right when Svenskeren is there. Poppy smacks him into the wall because he lined himself up to the wall perfectly to get that ward in, and he just dies. That's pretty much pure misplay on the side of Impact. She should have known Svenskeren was there based on what it looks like he crossed that Scuttle Crab. So this, like, he really should have expected this to happen. It's really poor play that it could work out like that. Burning the flash on top of it is also just big yikes. Anyway, pretty significant bot lane advantage. Oh yeah. Impact teleports in, and at this point, Licorice is already dead. Yeah, he takes a fight. We saw a moment ago, if you were looking at, if you take a look at the minimap right now and you look at Licorice's mana, he takes this fight. He does commit his dash onto Impact and does take the fight, which to some extent makes sense because there is a huge minion wave. However, it's a really sketchy fight because he is low health and he does have an item disadvantage. And on top of that, as soon as he commits to the fight, as a ranged champion in this melee matchup without flash, he puts himself into a situation where he needs to end the fight. He needs to kill Impact, basically, or force Impact to back off, or he just dies. Because what happens is if he just tries to walk away, Impact can just follow him and just keep autoing him, and Licorice will just die. So he committed to that fight before Xmithie walked into his vision, and by the time Xmithie was in that vision, even though the Sejuani was really far away, he had no way out of that fight. He was pretty much doomed to die at that point. And yeah, it was a really poor fight to take with that item disadvantage. Yeah, he had the level advantage, but he was down so much HP. And just risking those 1v1s when you already should be getting pressure in your lane, especially after Impact had just died and you have TP, it's really unnecessary risks for really not that much of a gain. Yeah, if you're able to solo kill Impact there, it's all well and good, but you should know how much damage your champion does. And yeah, there was a huge minion wave, but Impact wouldn't be going into that fight in the middle of a minion wave unless he knew something beneficial was going to happen for him. Jensen getting chunked in the mid lane. This is a really good matchup for Syndra. To be fair, most mid lane matchups are good for Syndra. And now we're going to see Cloud9 so far has fallen behind quite a bit in this early game that they were really supposed to win, based off the play top lane and the play mid lane that were kind of botched by Svenskeren and Licorice. Add that to the bot lane having a really significant disadvantage. Yes, Svenskeren hasn't spent significant time there, but neither has Xmithie. And Cloud9 did just see Xmithie in the top side, and going into this recall, Sneaky is down a significant amount of farm compared to Double Lift. And it's a matchup that the Xayah should be winning by some amount of margin, 10 CS maybe at this point, not down 20 CS. And it's really poor from Cloud9 to see that happening. We see a bunch of pings coming up onto Xmithie. This really allows Licorice to shove in, kind of really show why this is a Poppy favored matchup. It's difficult for Jace to trade back onto her when she is tanky. We're starting to see that pressure that we were really looking for out of Cloud9. We're starting to see mid lane and top lane all pushing in. Hopefully we'll see bot lane also being able to shove in. And then we can start seeing some of that aggression from Svenskeren. It will be difficult because he has not really been able to get any sort of lead because he did have that death earlier. This is just kind of a really lucky play from Zeyzal. Yeah, you could argue he was always going to get out there, but there is a world in which he gets taunted on the way out. And probably just dies. Either way, CoreJJ burns Flash. It was, I would argue, a worthwhile thing to do, getting that additional chance at pressure. It's a low risk, high reward play, because there's no way like he dies or anything terrible happens. He just doesn't have Flash, which on the Galio isn't necessarily the end of the world. You lose a lot of kill threat into your lane, but on its own, you don't really have that kill threat into Xayah Rakan anyway. So it's not the end of the world for CoreJJ to lose Flash, and the possible upside there is actually pretty high. So I would absolutely support that move from CoreJJ there. Now we're finally seeing Svenskeren making his way aggressively into the Team Liquid jungle. It is unfortunately at a time when Cloud9 has mistimed the Liquid blue buff and are going to not actually get much for this invade. But Impact's losing pressure on the top side, Jensen losing pressure in the mid lane. That's all really kind of what you expect from these matchups and what you would hope to see from Cloud9. We are going to see them kind of slowly recuperating the gold lead that they forfeited from those kind of botched early plays. And that's, in my opinion, a real sign of kind of what could have been for Cloud9. They were down something like 1,500 gold from those messed up plays, and they've already recuperated it for the most part and are going to be actually accumulating a bit of a lead here. So if Cloud9 had, say, not been over aggressive in that mid lane dive, or Licorice had just recalled and just played the early game a little bit more slowly, they could actually be quite far ahead. And that's really the strength of the Cloud9 comp, and what absolutely could have happened going into this game if Cloud9 hadn't been quite so overeager. Either way, map state hasn't really changed, other than Sneaky still not really getting the pressure or advantage that he should be able to in this matchup. As the game continues to go on, we're going to be able to start to look towards what the teams want to be doing in the mid and late game. ideally for Team Liquid, they want to get the game to a place where Impact is able to 1v1 this Poppy. Part of the strength of the Jace into the top lane meta right now is a lot of top laners are very, very squishy. Just because tanks are incredibly weak right now. As a result, Jace can go into top lane, bully the lane, win the lane, and then build lethality. And against a lot of top lane champions, if you're looking at like the Vladimir or the Kennen or any of the squishier top lane champions, that lethality build will still be effective in the 1v1, and she'll be able to still win the 1v1, be able to push aggressively in the 1-4 or in the 1-3-1, while having that lethality for the team fight burst to be able to throw massive shockwaves out and have this kind of... It's not incredibly powerful, it's pretty much always going to be less impactful than a Poppy's team fight. However, he in most matchups is in the meta as it stands right now is able to still have some amount of team fight power from lethality build. The reason the Poppy is strong into the Jace is that she forces him to choose, because she is tanky and does a significant amount of damage, and she can build that armor and still have threat onto him, which means that if he goes a lethality build, which is incredibly inefficient against armor items, the Poppy is really going to be able to still win that 1v1 and also be stronger in the team fight. So it almost forces him to go for a pure split push build to try and just beat the Poppy and forfeit really any 5v5 strength, which suits Cloud9 pretty well, and that's kind of what Impact is priced into doing here. We'll see additional pressure on the top side. Team Liquid will get the Drake. Let's back up a little bit and take a look at how that happened. So Svenskeren moves in for a dive on the top side. Team Liquid responds by moving on to the Cloud Drake. That's really to be expected, and honestly, it's a fine move from Cloud9. In an ideal world, since Svenskeren doesn't get spotted out on the way in, and they're able to kill Impact and move on to the Rift Herald, as a much more valuable trade for this Cloud Drake, which is not a necessarily valuable objective in this game. However, if you're looking at Cloud9's early game like strength, they have this pressure in the 3 lanes. What they really should be looking to do is to control the Team Liquid jungle and be able to pick up these neutral objectives, these heralds and drakes for basically free, because they have the pressure in the lanes to support those moves. Unfortunately, because things have to some extent gone pretty sideways for C9, because they don't have the pressure in the bot lane they really necessarily need, because they haven't been able to send Svenskeren into the jungle aggressively to shut down Xmithie and shut down TL Vision, TL is able to take these neutral objectives in trades as opposed to just losing them for free, which really supports Team Liquid's goal of extend the game, let the game go a bit longer. We have stronger scaling to some extent because we have these beefier tanks, especially in the 1-4. And don't let Cloud9 snowball, and taking trades is the opposite of snowballing. It slows down the game to some extent, and it ultimately favors Team Liquid. Yes, Cloud9 should be doing what they can to open up the map and help push their advantages, and a Cloud Drake is not a huge loss, so it is okay to be losing things like a Cloud Drake when you see that the game has gone sideways. All in all, it's an acceptable move from Cloud9, and I'm actually a bit happy that they chose to make that trade, because the Cloud Drake was going to promote their game plan less than pushing the top side and getting down that turret or killing Impact and having pressure onto the Rift Herald. However, they aren't really able to do that because Impact catches them out, they don't shove down the top turret, they don't get the Rift Herald. And Team Liquid ends up with basically a Drake for turret plate trade, which is still pretty favorable for TL. Moving into the mid game, not quite the mid game, but turret plates are down. C9 says, okay, we need the Rift Herald, and yes, this is to some extent true. Cloud9's team composition really wants to be taking Herald and utilizing Herald to push down turrets and open up the map and allow them into TL's jungle. especially since they've been unable to push into that jungle so far. However, this is a really ill-advised attempt at forcing the Rift Herald. You can already see health advantages on the side of TL because Svenskeren is taking quite a bit of damage from the Rift Herald, and you can also, on top of that, see that the Team Liquid bottom lane is already rotating up. Very soon, Gallia will be in range of the hero's entrance, which basically puts Cloud9 into a position of, oh, our bottom lane is nowhere near here and theirs is here. We have two options. We can either finish off the Herald and try and get it really quick and disengage, which they fail to do because Svenskeren gets stunned and is unable to pop the World Ender in time. Or we can just back off and give away the Rift Herald. Obviously, the result is the worst of both worlds. They lose Svenskeren's life and Niski's flash and lose the Rift Herald. But this is ultimately not really great communication for Cloud9. They really can't have they really couldn't afford to have been going for this. Maybe if Sneaky and Zazal were not on a recall and had been pressuring bot lane, they could have set this up as a trade of Rift Herald for bottom turret, which would have been an acceptable play. But Sneaky and Zazal recalling right at the time when Cloud9 is trying to pressure the map elsewhere is really not what you want to be doing, and it's kind of disappointing to see. We are, however, finally getting to see that bot lane pressure. Xayah is at a point of power, having just finished the Essence Reaver, especially compared to the Kai'Sa, so we are finally seeing that bot lane pressure that we were really kind of waiting for. They should be able to slowly push pressure down that turret and then move into the mid lane and try and pressure down mid and then take control of the jungle. That's really how Cloud9 want to be moving into this mid game. And Team Liquid's goal is for the most part going to be get Impact to a place where he has the stronger 1v1 into the Poppy and get the map into a spot where we can 4-1, because the Team Liquid 4v4 is much stronger than the Cloud9's 4v4. C9's only front line is going to be stuck in the 1v1. And if the 1v1 for Liquid is also winning, then a 4-1 is going to be really difficult for Cloud9 to deal with. So they really need to be pushing down these outer turrets and opening up the map so that they can get the deep vision and they can be on the front foot and be the ones pushing in and get to decide what the lane assignments are, rather than letting Team Liquid dictate how the game moves in that sense. Right here, we're gonna see Svenskeren just kind of chilling in this bush for way too long. We can see Sneaky is pathing away from the team. We can see that Jensen is closer than Niski, as well as Impact is closer than Licorice. And Zazal right here can't really... Well, he can move in towards Svenskeren. I think that's what he ends up doing. But that's still pretty much sticking you into a 2 versus 5 situation, because, as I said, Sneaky's all the way over there. Sneaky's pathed away. And Svenskeren really had no right to be sitting in that bush for so long. There's the argument that maybe he was looking for some sort of C9 engage, and it was Cloud9 playing poorly around what Svenskeren was trying to do, but there was never going to be any engage there, not with the way the mid lane was situated and the way that the river vision was so TL favored that Sneaky had no way of walking into the river or realistically ever being a part of that engage. So Team Liquid gets another free objective. Team Liquid gets more chance to shove out waves and shut down Cloud9 aggression. Cloud9 doing really a poor job of shutting down the Team Liquid vision. They have so much pressure in their lanes, and they have access to, they have the double sweeper, they have these control wards, and Liquid still has complete vision control of the majority of the map because Cloud9 is not really willing to exert their pressure in any meaningful way. Svenskeren has yet to really be able to take advantage of the lane pressure in mid and bot lane. And to some extent, you can say, yeah, that's just Xmithy outplaying Svenskeren and being on top of what Svenskeren is trying to do, but Sejuani shouldn't be able to do that. Sejuani shouldn't be able to push Aatrox around. Aatrox should have the advantage in the Sejuani 1v1 and in any sort of 2v2 scenario. So it's really just Cloud9 failing to pressure the map in any real meaningful way. Licorice goes in very aggressively, and Jensen has the beautiful stopwatch just as the lethal auto attack is coming in, so he's saving the stopwatch for the last possible minute. And if you're Cloud9 moving into this play, you're considering, okay, Licorice is dead. Jensen is out of the fight because he's burned all of his summoners and he has no health. We now can take this 4 versus 4 because our team composition is to some extent still stronger right now. Even though T9 loses the 4v4 most of the time, Jace is much less impactful in that 4 versus 4 than Orianna is. So having the 4 versus 4 with Orianna gone and Jace in is much more advantageous for Cloud9. At the same time, Jace is split pushing top. So to some extent, Cloud9 has to do something and has to make some sort of play happen that forces Impact to teleport. Otherwise, there's going to be so much pressure and so much power lost in the top lane. And Impact is really going to be able to kind of run away with it. We saw this happen in Team Liquid's matchup against, was it FlyQuest? Where Impact was allowed to just push down multiple turrets on the Jace and really ran away with the game because Team Liquid's opponents were unable to make a play happen on the other side of the map to force the teleport to come out. Cloud9 do make a play happen. They do force the teleport to come out. However, we'll see Jensen isn't actually as out of this fight as we would think. He pops all 3 charges of the Corrupting Potion and is able to regen enough health that he wouldn't just die to a random Xayah Feather. And then here we'll see just the real 4v4 weakness of Cloud9's team composition. They have no real frontline with the Poppy gone, and all of Cloud9's backline carries are forced just kind of sitting there hitting the tanky Sejuani and the tanky Galio instead of being able to interact with Team Liquid whatsoever. And Sejuani and Galio are just able to soak up so much damage that the Aatrox and the Rakan are not able to soak up. That's why we see Aatrox and Rakan just die when they're faced with tanking all this damage, and the Sejuani and the Galio, they're fine. Like, it is a favorable 4 versus 4 for Team Liquid, especially if Jensen is involved. And seeing him be able to be a part of that fight using the Shockwave, it really made that play go completely sideways for Cloud9. And now that that has happened, Cloud9 has now pretty much forfeited any lead they really had. Gold lead is now again in favor of Team Liquid. Impact got a bunch of extra CS in the top side. He got kills in that fight. He is almost finished with the Blade of the Rune King, which is going to really propel him into an advantageous 1 versus 1, because as we see, he's getting Blade of the Rune King plus Black Cleaver plus Conqueror really, really strong as a tank busting build, whilst the Poppy is picking up MR, which is completely useless in the matchup. And this is where we see the split push Jace. Yeah, he's still getting bullied right now. Blade of the Rune King hasn't yet come through. It will eventually, and the matchup is going to get really, really rough for Licorice. Fortunately, though, for Cloud9, they are not yet at that point. They're going to be able to burn down this turret. And this is really Cloud9's only option. Like, they need to be more aggressively pushing forward. However, they don't actually win this 4 versus 4 because of the strength of the Team Liquid frontline. They are, however, going to actually get the better side of this engage because Jensen just doesn't use his incredibly powerful teamfight ultimate, which is really what makes TL win the 4v4. And you add on to that Xmithy completely whiffs the Glacial Prison. And Cloud9 get what is ultimately a lucky fight that they should not have gotten. They shouldn't have been able to win out there much at all. Fortunately, they are, for them, and kill Xmithy, get mid lane turret. It's really good for Cloud9 to get that mid lane turret down. We can skip this replay. It's really good for Cloud9 to get that mid lane turret down because it really allows them back onto the map, right? If that mid lane turret is up, it's really, really easy for Team Liquid to defend a line of scrimmage that is pretty high up in their jungle, even possibly moving up into the river. And that makes it very difficult for Cloud9 to get any sort of snowball going or to control the Baron pit in a particularly meaningful way, especially when there are these really kind of beefy tanks that can really solidly walk into Cloud9 vision without much fear. So the game continues. There is now a Blade of the Rune King on impact, so he should be able to start to actually have pressure onto this Poppy. Poppy choosing to finish up the Iceborne Gauntlet and delay the MR, the finishing of the MR item, definitely helps with that on C9's side. But we're really starting to get to the point in the game where the split push Jace build is going to become more powerful, and the 4-1 is going to become an actual nightmare for Cloud9. So far, this game has been a really kind of good example of how important the early priority is, and how important having that priority and that strength on the map at any given time is. Because at any given point, there are any given set of lane assignments will favor one team over the other. For the most part, there are situations where things are like very, very even, but that's incredibly rare and not really something you're going to see. At any given time, there are going to be sets of lane assignments that are beneficial for one team over the other, and vice versa. So Cloud9 would probably be a bit stronger in 1-3-1 because of how strong Niski is into the Orianna. However, if you get that early priority, if you have that early advantage, or if at any point you have advantage on the map, then you get to decide what the lane assignments are. So if Team Liquid has the further forward line of scrimmage because they have this better vision and they have this meatball frontline that can aggressively push into Cloud9 territory and put down vision and clear out Cloud9 vision and push the line of scrimmage forward, then Team Liquid gets to decide the lane assignments. Team Liquid can say, okay, we're going to 4-1, and because we are more forward on the map than you are, if you try and do not 4-1, we will push down turrets before you can. Cloud9, on the other hand, really needed to get that early advantage because they had this really strong early game so that they could force the 1-3-1, so that they could force Liquid into a disadvantageous situation in which they couldn't take advantage of the strength of the Orianna. And that kind of fell apart for Cloud9, entirely in them attempting to make aggressive plays, and those aggressive plays not working. The game continues. We see now the MR finished for Licorice, whilst Jace still getting more AD. This is going to get progressively worse for the Poppy as the game moves on. Team Liquid still able to 4-1 very effectively. Doublelift going to get dragged into the top lane to deal with Sneaky, but that's not the Syndra Orianna matchup that Cloud9 really wants to be abusing right now. So even if Cloud9 is able to get that kind of 1-3-1, if it's Sneaky in the top side, that's not really going to be relevant. So looking at the map right now, you can see Cloud9 was almost a second ago trying to get that kind of 1-3-1 that lets them abuse the Syndra Orianna matchup by sending their 3 to the top side and kind of hoping that Team Liquid would take that bait and end up in that matchup. They don't. Team Liquid instead sends their 3 into the jungle, aggressively pushing for that Baron control. This is really the fundamentals of closing out a game when you have a lead, and Team Liquid does absolutely have a lead. And that's really how Team Liquid wants to be playing this game. Have the strength in the top lane matchup, have that pressure onto the Poppy, and use your more powerful 4v4, your beefy frontline to push aggressively into the Cloud9 red side jungle, clear out their vision, put down your vision aggressively, and force the Baron. Either forcing a Baron capture, or forcing a Baron teamfight, or forcing a Baron face check. Any of the above catapult Team Liquid even further ahead. And even if that doesn't happen, even if Team Liquid is just having their 4 people sit in the mid lane and shove mid. Eventually, this Jace Poppy matchup will culminate in Jace taking turrets. I want to take a look at this fight right here, because the C9 line of scrimmage is pretty much this. They can't really push out much further than their turrets. Yeah, they have pink wards here, so you could argue it's something like this, but even being out here would be really risky, so maybe it's over here. But ultimately, if you look at where Team Liquid are, they are pushed up. They've really had control of the mid lane for a while, so they kind of know there is no Cloud9 vision in the C9 blue side jungle. And Cloud9 is going to walk kind of right past their line of scrimmage. And they're going to walk past their line of scrimmage by a significant margin. Now, I don't understand why Cloud9 is trying to force the wave to go forward and trying to force pressure in the disadvantageous 4 versus 4 that they have. But they do, and they will get flanked by the Sejuani. And we're going to see here, Svenskeren chooses to flash in at the same time that the rest of Cloud9 chooses to flash out. And he, as a jungle Aatrox, is never going to get to a point where he can 1 versus 2 dive the Team Liquid backline and take out carries. So he just dies. And that's a fact of jungle Aatrox, is that it plays in team fights completely differently from a top lane Aatrox, because it doesn't have the damage or the tankiness to make the kinds of plays that top lane Aatrox does. And jungle Aatrox, unlike top lane Aatrox, just cannot solo dive the backline. It needs somebody else to dive the backline with it. Ideally the Poppy or Zeyzal. However, Zeyzal gets locked up, Poppy is stuck in the 1 versus 1, so that doesn't happen. Svenskeren just dies. Cloud9 loses even more pressure, loses the bot side turret. Out of Team Liquid, this was really solid of them to kind of recognize that C9 was much farther forward than they had any right to be. They do get off this really nice flank, aren't able to make much else happen on the top side of the fight, but are able to kind of pick up Svenskeren. And here we do kind of see the kind of strict teamfight weakness of the Jace. If that fight had gone on longer, if Team Liquid had tried to continue the engage and fight in the against the 4 remaining members of Cloud9, that would have gone very poorly for them, because the Jace you saw there was really not doing anything, even though he was hitting people, but he wasn't doing any significant amount of damage. And the Poppy would have been able to ultimate people away, and that would have been a C9 fight. So Team Liquid making the smart call, taking the 1 kill that they can, using that to move more aggressively, to get a nice reset and move more aggressively into the Cloud9 jungle. And the map resets. Team Liquid is much kind of further back than you would expect them to be at this point in the game. And then Xmithy takes a blind blast cone, ends up landing right on top of Zeyzal, and kind of gets caught. C9, however, are going to overchase. They don't have... They're much further forward than they should be, because Team Liquid isn't pressuring the way they just were. Team Liquid kind of randomly backed off a lot. And I'm not necessarily sure why they did that, unless they were wagering on the fact that Cloud9 would overchase to try and reclaim some of that map pressure, and that they could make a play happen off of that. Either way, Cloud9 overchase the pick into the Fog of War, which they should not have done, and Sneaky will get bursted down, Licorice will get bursted down. The rest of C9 is able to disengage. And then Core JJ just kind of walks right into melee range. Doesn't pop any abilities, just walks right into melee range of Aatrox and just dies because of it. Really questionable move from Core JJ there. An LCS MVP right there. But anyway, Team Liquid get even more map pressure. They choose to use it to push as a 4-man into the mid lane, which I very much disagree with. The Jace is not impactful enough. The Syndra wave clear is good enough to really not let anything happen here. And they're going to go for the Ocean Drake. This is really safe from Team Liquid. It's really slow from Team Liquid. Especially if you look in their inventories and they have all of these control wards. They are so prepared to take control of a lot of vision. And they had, after this fight, the perfect opportunity to move back into the Cloud9 red side jungle, take down all of the C9 vision there, replace it with all of their own vision, and really have complete control of the Baron pit and start making plays onto the Baron. Yes, you can argue that Cloud9 has a better 5 versus 5, but you don't need to make those plays 5 versus 5. You can leave Jace in the bot lane. I think this is really a missed opportunity from Team Liquid, and it's really a failure to push their advantage in the way that they really could, with how far ahead they are and how difficult it is for Cloud9 to make aggressive moves. Right here, we're going to see Team Liquid making an attempt at clearing out that aggressive vision. However, because they didn't do so earlier, they don't have the jungle vision going into this play. They didn't get the jungle vision when they were stronger, so now they're trying to get it when they're even. And they don't know where C9 is. Presumably they have an idea where Sneaky and Svenskeren are. I don't know if my screen is white now. I need to see this replay. So they see Sneaky and Svenskeren were just clearing a wave up in the top side, so they know that Sneaky and Svenskeren are up there, and they still choose to aggressively push in, really into 3 people, and Niski also is going to make his way up. JJ, the intelligent player, sees what's happening. He knows that Svenskeren and Sneaky were there. He knows that, okay, we were able to come in and get that ward on the Krugs. We need to leave now. Xmithy decides he wants to clear the pink ward, even though T9's moving in, and Xmithy will just die for it. This is... yeah, ultimately it's disrespect from Xmithy. He should not have stayed for that pink ward. It was incredibly greedy of him, especially since he knew where Sneaky and Svenskeren were. And it slows down the game even more. It slows Team Liquid's victory. And it is... yes, Team Liquid are fine if the game goes late, but even so, Cloud9 don't just fall over in a late game 5 versus 5. Cloud9's scaling is not laughable. It's not as if there's a Draven or a Kalista in the bottom lane. It's not as if there is a Kennen in the top lane for C9. C9 does still have quite a bit of late game strength. Yes, they have less late game strength than Team Liquid, especially in the 4-1. But they don't just fall over if the game goes late. And the later the game goes, the more you have to interact with Cloud9 and play the game with Cloud9, the more opportunities you have to make a mistake and let Cloud9 back into the game, and the more opportunities Cloud9 has to make some sort of miracle hero play and get their way back into the game. So those type of mistakes from Xmithy, yes, on the face of things, they don't really cost anything, but they cost time. And yes, Team Liquid to some extent has time, but the more time you take to close out the game, the riskier the said closing out of the game becomes. Looking at this team fight, we see really the split team fight that kind of favors Team Liquid. You want you want the Kai'Sa to be able to dash in behind onto a separated member, and that's pretty much exactly what happens. Svenskeren, again, it's a jungle Aatrox, so it's not the kind of Aatrox that can just jump onto an AD carry and kill her. And Team Liquid are going to use that chunk to try and force Cloud9 into a Baron fight. They're not realistically trying to kill a Baron here. They're trying to do pretty much exactly this. And Zeyzal was up far too aggressively. He was pretty much alone, and his way out was basically sneaky because he has the extended dash range onto specifically Xayah. So his way out was sneaky being nearby to provide an ally for the Rakan to dash to, but Sneaky had to burn the ultimate and walk away when Xmithy used his ultimate on him, which meant that the Xayah was no longer close enough to the Rakan for the Rakan to get out, and Zeyzal was just too far forward. This is really a questionable Baron play from Team Liquid. If you look at the state of the map, yeah, you killed Zeyzal, so you can make aggressive plays, but Team Liquid don't need to take this 50-50 in the Baron pit. Team Liquid don't need to be making these risky plays. Like, look at the mid lane. You have the Jace pressuring the mid lane. You can leave the Baron at a bit of a higher life total while Jace pushes down mid and forces Cloud9 off. Even if that doesn't happen, if Impact is able to, if Team Liquid leaves the Baron a bit of a higher life total, and Impact is able to instead walk in through the Cloud9 jungle to try and force Svenskeren, who is low health, away from the pit, this becomes a much better looking Baron for Team Liquid. Beyond even that, taking a 50-50 Baron such as that is a much riskier choice, a much riskier line than just sending your 4 top lane or sending your Jace bot lane and your 4 mid lane and just pushing turrets with that advantage. Because they could have easily guaranteed a turret without taking a risky Baron. Yes, the majority of the time, Xmithy will outsmite or will get the Baron there, but it's still really an unnecessary risk. Yes, I was just talking about how it is favorable for Team Liquid to end the game sooner rather than later, but this is a 40-60 play for Team Liquid, compared to drawing the game out, which is maybe an 80-20 play or a 90-10 play. Yes, it is advantageous to close out the game faster, and taking risks is often the best way to do that, but you have to analyze which risks are worth taking and which risks are not, and that is ultimately, I felt, not a risk worth taking. So Cloud9 does pick up the Baron. They're able to use the Baron pressure to kind of force their way back onto the map. Having Baron is a really effective way to get to choose lane assignments, because having the pressure of the Baron waves makes it so that you push faster, so that you can outpush if they try and move with different lane assignments than you. However, they are still behind a significant amount of gold. They are still at a point where Team Liquid's 4 versus 4 is just significantly stronger. And yes, C9 is in a 5v5 situation right now, but it is that split 5v5, which is kind of more favorable to TL, because again, the Aatrox isn't that powerhouse Aatrox that can dive in on his own, and Licorice is on the other side of the fight. Having these also split fights means that the Jace is able to get auto attacks in onto Licorice. If Jace had been on the other side of that fight, it would have been a different story, and he would not have been able to be really impactful. But because a good portion of that fight ended up being Aatrox and Rakan in onto the TL backline, which is just not strong enough as a jungle support to be the ones diving in, compared to Licorice kind of alone against a lot of the TL backline. And that includes Impact, who was then able to just kind of get autos off, and it was the same aspect of how Impact is powerful in the 1 versus 1. He's powerful against specifically Licorice, but weak against the rest of Cloud9. Impact found himself fighting just Licorice in that fight, because Cloud9 took the split fight. They were not coordinated. They did not get the really solid engage that they really need. And TL, with their gold advantage, with their item advantage, with the advantage in the split fight, are able to take it down and to get the Elder Drake, which is really going to spell the end for Cloud9 moving into this Elder buff, because Cloud9 already is going to be having a remarkably difficult time in the 1-4. If you tack onto that Team Liquid now has also the Elder Drake, it is going to be pretty much impossible for Licorice to deal with Impact in any way. It's going to be pretty much impossible for the members of Cloud9 to get any sort of fight off onto the 4 of Team Liquid through those tanky front lines, and the Elder Drake empowering all of the backline damage with all of that burn. On top of that, because of the kills in that fight, Team Liquid is able to get the mid lane inhibitor before the map resets. So it's the map has really reached an untenable position for Cloud9, and closing out this game, if you're Team Liquid, is now looking to be actually very easy. You have now a truly significant gold lead. You have the Elder Drake with 4 Elemental Drakes backing it up. And you have this kind of powerful split push Jace that Cloud9 doesn't really have an answer to. So Cloud9 going to lose 2 inhibitors here. They're just not able to get into this fight in any meaningful way. Their engage is really dependent on a vision advantage or a flank, which they cannot get when they're trapped in their base like this. So it's really difficult for Cloud9. Yes, they may have the advantage in a front-to-back fight if the Elder Drake isn't up, but that's just not going to work. So Cloud9 make this desperation play the moment the Elder Drake falls off. It really was never going to be successful because the gold lead for Team Liquid has ballooned to such an extent, and because Nisqy was not present in this fight, and again, because we see Licorice was kind of forced to back off a bit. He re-engages or moves his focus from the Team Liquid backline onto trying to disengage Core JJ, or trying to disengage Xmithy from his own backline, which means that, again, the Aatrox is all alone in the backline. And this isn't a top lane Aatrox, it's a jungle Aatrox, and he is not able to exist. He's not able to accomplish anything alone in the backline. He needs to be diving with somebody else, which he's unable to do because Licorice chooses to disengage for his own backline rather than aid Svenskaren's dive. Teamfight falls apart because of the gold lead, because it was such a split fight, which do ultimately favor Team Liquid, and Team Liquid will win the game. All in all, there were a lot of mistakes from both teams coming into this game. Cloud9 was really over-aggressive in places that they didn't really need to be, and it really cost them their early advantage, which then allowed Team Liquid to kind of shut them out of the game. Team Liquid, on the other hand, made a lot of really, not necessarily question, they made a lot of mistakes in the later stages of the game, which really resulted in them taking a lot longer to close out the game. They had a lot of kind of random deaths, especially on Xmithy, which should not have happened, and it seemed to some extent like Team Liquid wasn't really sure how they should be maneuvering to close out the game, and as a result, they took risky plays they didn't need to take. They got picked off and lost time in places that they should not have. And it was a much messier game from Team Liquid than you would have wanted to see. After watching this match of the two titans of North America, I do have to say I'm not as excited for MSI as I was before. Both teams were looking really messy. Both teams were making some pretty basic mistakes that they shouldn't have really been making. And it was a very messy game. Yes, they did still look better than most of the other teams in North America. They did seem to have a pretty basic understanding of what they should be doing at any time, and there were moments of really solid maneuvering from Cloud9 in the early game and from Team Liquid responding to that. But watching this match, there were a lot of mistakes, and I have to be hopeful that in Vod Review these teams are able to address some of what went wrong on both ends, and hopefully use this particular match to improve a lot and really address some of those mistakes moving forward. So that was Cloud9 versus Team Liquid. I'm John Valentine. Thanks for watching.